Debates around genetically modified crops are not new in India. For example, BT brinjal had raised questions around its ecological impact, the effect on humans upon consumption, and the potential increase in yield. Now, the genetically modified variant of mustard, DMH11, has the approval for environmental release by the Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee, or GEAC. But the Supreme Court of India, in its series of hearings over the past few weeks, has asked the centre to spell out whether there was any compelling reason for the release of GM mustard. The Apex Court of India has been deliberating on the need and purpose of granting environmental approval to GM mustard by the GEAC. At the same time, as per sources, the crop has already reached the flowering stage in the fields where it has been planted for further studies. The plant is in 6 test fields and is believed to be in healthy condition. The court was told in the hearing by the petitioners that genetically modified mustard was unsustainable in the Indian context. Petitioners against the sowing of the crop argued that the companies holding the patent for GM crops are themselves testing the viability of these crops. Meanwhile, around 30% of India's estimated annual consumption of edible oil comes from sources that are directly or indirectly produced from genetically modified crops. It has been reported that BT brinjal is also being illegally cultivated in several Indian states. India had already approved one of the GM crops, BT cotton, in 2002. Currently, India is the second largest cotton producer in the world. Also, more than 80% of the total cotton production in all the 9 cotton producing states in India is from BT cotton. And cotton production in India has considerably improved both in terms of yield and total production. For the advocates of genetically modified crops, cotton is a perfect example of how technology can improve productivity. According to the Solvent Extractors Association, the edible oil import bill of India has risen 34.8% to 1.57 trillion rupees in 2022. This suggests that India is relying on foreign imports for domestic edible oil consumption. With mustard being the most consumed edible oil in India, the scientist behind the GM mustard variant, Deepak Pental, argues for the introduction of GM mustard as the solution to match up the edible oil demand in the country.
Well, we have a serious deficit of edible oils. Last financial year, around 156,000 crore worth of edible oils were imported, which is a great shame because we are still agriculture dependent country in many ways, and with more than 40, 45, 47% of the population on farming. So farmers are not getting enough incomes. We need to move forward for disease resistance, for increasing the yields, for being prepared for the climate change. So why not now?
The argument against GM crops has been active in India. Organizations like GM Free India are at the forefront of battling against the introduction of GM crops in the country. Their concerns are based on the short and long-term ecological impact and the lack of regulations in India for managing the GM crops. BT brinjal may still be illegal on papers, but it is already being cultivated in several Indian states.
We can achieve self-reliance by looking at technologies that are non-seed based. There are a lot of agronomic technologies where something like system of mustard intensification or zero tillage mustard cultivation, or even better seed treatment practices of mustard seed. There's a lot of research out there that is showing that yield of oilseed crops can be improved if you reduce the technology gap between what is already known to improve yields through non-GM methods and what farmers are right now practicing. You can reduce that technology gap, technology knowledge and adoption gap, basically. And for every problem that we have, we can't, unscientifically think that a seed technology will solve the problem. There are many, many things that get solved by policy incentives. Why do we have such low import duties on oilseed and oil imports, for instance. When you do that, you're pricing out your own farmers in the domestic market, and they are not incentivized to produce oilseed crops anymore. We need cultivation incentives. We need better MSP to be given, which is on par with good market prices. And you need definite procurement. That's when farmers will produce more oilseeds. There are many things that can be done on the policy and non-GM, non-seed technology front, which can improve production and yields of oil seeds in India. It is nobody's case. It would be completely foolish for an entire country to say unscientifically that without GM technology, we will not be able to bring down India's import of edible oils. We already have hybrids, and we did not bring down edible oil imports. That is the simple answer.
While the long-term impacts of genetically modified crops on the environment and food chain are still uncertain, a section of the agricultural sector in India is optimistic about the short-term benefits of boosting crop yields. There can be no doubt that the future of agriculture will be based on science. This will hold true if the country wishes to cut down on import dependence when it comes to edible oils. As such, while doubts may remain, can India really afford to miss the bus on GM crops?
If you like this video, share it and subscribe to Business Standard. For more news, views and insights, log on to www.business-standard.com. Do also follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram and LinkedIn.